Hi everyone, this is Eunkyung. I'm a graduate assistant at the Palmer Museum of Art. Thank you for joining today's online art club. Today we're going to look at various artworks about flowers. There are a lot of beautiful pieces that can inspire us in Palmer's collection. Then let's start. When you think about flowers in artworks, you might think about still life paintings. A still life is a work of art depicting mostly inanimate subject matter, such as flowers, fruit, and household objects. A still life, as a particular genre, became popular in art beginning in the 17th century. Through still life painting, artists experiment with the arrangement of elements within a composition and display their skills for depicting realistic objects using paints. This painting by Abraham Mignon was made in the 17th century and is titled Flower Still Life. Notice how the painting looks incredibly realistic with different textures and colors. I especially like how the artist created the impression of light to focus our attention on the flowers using a spotlight effect with a dark background and shadows. Flowers are also a great subject matter for East Asian paintings. This artwork shows how 19th century Japanese artists expressed flowers using woodblock printing. Here flowers, stems, and leaves fill the flat surface of the sheet, in a graphic illustration of beautiful blooms instead of an attempt to represent three-dimensional objects. But flowers have not always been depicted in flat paper or canvas. Many artists have painted flowers on objects or created three-dimensional flowers as well. This 18th century Pennsylvania German dower chest includes intricate flower patterns painted on the furniture's surface. Some artists create three-dimensional flowers using glass. Take a look at how the artist created flower petals and stems with a glossy surface of the glass. How about this sculpture? It reminds me of a flower swaying in the wind. The title of this sculpture is Fiorito, which means in bloom in Italian. The artist used a distinctive technique named filet de verre that fuses threads of glass to achieve unmatched exploration of colors. Our last example is this sculpture, Harlem Rose. The artist Willie Cole made this sculpture by compiling scuffed and worn-out women's shoes and forming them into a shape of a flower. It represents not only a blossoming rose but also growth and advancement through hard work. In this case, paying respect to the African American women like the artist's mother and grandmother who worked through walk and protest to advance civil rights and social justice. By shaping everyday materials into totally different objects, artists create deeper ideas for us to ponder. So today we are going to create artworks about flowers in various ways with these inspirations. What kind of flowers do you want to create? You can draw, print, or make whatever flowers you want. Try new ways that you have never used in your creation. It would make your exploration much more fun. I am going to upcycle an egg carton to make three-dimensional flowers today. To make flowers with an egg carton, you will need papers, acrylic or watercolor paints, a palette, brushes, scissors, glue, an egg carton, and decorative materials such as pom-poms. Through this creation, I'd like to express the importance of masks. First, egg cartons would be flowers. Cut out the egg carton. Please be careful when you use scissors. You can also ask adults for help. After cutting out, round the edges by tearing or cutting. Specifically, tearing would make them look more like petals. Then let's paint egg cartons. I will paint 5 egg cartons using pink and red colors. I used watercolor paint though. I think acrylic paints would be better to express bright colors. If you use watercolor paints like me, it would be better to use just a little water. It will help you to get bright colors. So, until the flowers dry, I will draw the mask and cut it off, and put the mask on the paper using glue. And glue pom-poms in the center of the flowers. You can use any materials such as buttons or beads instead of these pom-poms. And glue flowers around the masks. I outline the mask and write the message on the mask using a marker. This is how it turned out. I hope everyone will mask up and save lives during this winter. Let's stay safe until the flowers bloom again. Let's check in with my friends on the education team to see how they approach this prompt.
Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make paper flowers. For this project you'll need different colored paper, scissors, a pencil, a stapler, and a glue stick. First, cut a tall skinny rectangle and fold it like an accordion. So fold it on one side and then flip it over, fold it on the other side, and keep going back and forth until you get all the way to the end. After you have your accordion fold, find the center by folding it in half. Then take your stapler and staple in the middle. You can cut off the edges of your accordion if you want to round off your petals or make spiky petals. You can cut them into whatever shape you like. Then you'll take your glue stick and glue it onto one of the flat edges and glue the 2 sides together. You'll then do this on the other side as well to make your full flower shape. You might need to hold the petals together for a little while so that the glue adheres to itself. It might take a couple, maybe 30 seconds or so to just pinch those together so they stay in place. Then you can decorate it however you like. You can cut out different shapes for the center. You could even make another flower and put it on top. It's up to you. So this is our first way of making a paper flower. The second way involves cutting 4 strips of paper. You can cut the strips as thick or thin as you want, or as long or short as you want. It's just going to dictate how big your flower is. You don't want them too short though, or else they won't be able to fold into the center, but you can kind of cut them however size you want. Then you'll take your first piece and fold it in half to find the center, and then glue each piece on in through the middle to make this sort of star shape. Then flip it over, and starting with the bottom strip, start folding the pieces into the center and adding glue in between each one. You might need to use a little bit of extra glue just to get enough on there, but if you do have enough glue, it will stick pretty strongly. For this one, I decided to make a second smaller flower to put in the middle. You could stop here with just your base and add whatever you want on top, or you can make a second flower like I did to just make it even a little bit more 3-dimensional and festive. Then I took a piece of yellow paper to just make another little center in the middle of this flower. After I made my first 2, I decided to make some more so that I can make a pretty picture using all of them. I played with making different sizes. You see this one is a little bit smaller. They get a little trickier the smaller you make them, but you can definitely play with different sizes and even play with different shapes. You can experiment with how you do this accordion. There's a lot of different varieties you could make, like this really tiny little yellow one where I made it very skinny but very long. So there's a lot of petals in a very small little flower. Then I made some more of the strip flowers as well, just so that I had some variety. And again, I played with some different sizes. I think the little ones turn out really, really cute. Last, I decided to make some leaves. I just cut out some sort of general leaf shapes and then glued the ends together so that they looked 3-dimensional. I think almost any shape would work, but these looked like little half ovals. Then I arranged them onto a piece of paper just to make a little composition and see what they looked like together. And I think they look really cute.
I actually draw and paint flowers a lot, so this week was really fun for me. I just went with a simple illustration. I got my skinny markers and picked out a few colors and just drew flower-shaped blobs on the paper, and I went through and colored them in so they were all their own shape and size and color, and then I went back in with my micron pens and added some really loose outlines and designs to the shapes that were there. And I tried to make them all different, so there was a lot of variety, and I used different thicknesses in the markers too, so that really added to the detail. And then once I finished outlining and designing each shape, I went back and added some like leaf shapes and more squiggly designs just to add to the detail, because I think it makes it look way more like full and illustrated. So yeah, this week was really fun. It was just a quick, fun doodle for me to make, but I think it turned out pretty well, and I liked it.
For my flowers, I decided to use acrylic paint as usual because it's my favorite medium. I started by gluing a piece of tan construction paper into my sketchbook because I wanted to give the flowers a little bit of a different background. I bought flowers this week. My roommates and I love to buy fresh flowers from the store every week, and I picked out pink Gerber daisies because those are my favorite colors, or those are my favorite flowers. So I decided to just set them down next to my sketchbook and paint the flowers from life. I picked out my paint palette. I didn't try to make these flowers look super realistic. I just kind of focused on using the colors and just making little marks and little lines with my paintbrush. I loved the way that the paint looked on top of the brown construction paper. It just gave it a little bit of a different look, and I think it really made the colors, the pink, pop. Then I went back in and I added the centers of my flowers with some yellow little dots, and then I used green to paint the stems. I ended up not liking the one green that I picked, so I went back in and picked a different green and went back over that. That's the best part about using acrylic paint, is it dries so quickly, so you can just go over something if you don't like it. I had a lot of fun with this, and I loved that I got to use my favorite flowers that I had sitting in my house as inspiration.
Thank you so much for watching. We can't wait to see what you create. Show us your artwork with the hashtag PalmerOnlineArtClub. We'll see you next time for another look into Palmer's collection. Bye!